Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now live streaming from High Mountain Presbyterian Church. And I am Pastor Luke Kilgore. I see there's Barbara has joined us. Hi, Barbara.
Hello.
So I got word that Colleen was not going to make it tonight, so it's just you and me right now. But also then we'll be joined silently from the people who are watching the live stream. So, how are you?
Okay. I know Debbie's planning on joining us, so she should be coming in a minute.
Okay. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit. Volume's way up.
So that's Psalms.
Yep. So we are up to Psalm 30. No, sorry, my page flipped shut. Hold on a second. Where was I just reading? Yes, we're at Psalm 33.
Okay.
Our last one was Psalm 32, and so
There's in RSV. Bible Gateway. Okay.
this psalm is a hymn. And they'll often say that the Psalms are a hymn, but this one's more clearly a hymn. This was part of the liturgy throughout the years and years of the people of Israel gathering to encourage faith and remind them that God was with them. This is called a hymn to the Creator. So I think we'll wait a little bit for Debbie to arrive. And again, for those of you who are watching either live or later, we will be reading Psalm 33, and we'll be discussing what it has to say for us today on a cold and snowy-like night. I bet you wish you were in Florida now, don't you, Barbara?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I haven't been out at all today, but I will be out tomorrow.
Oh, my. The cold is, I don't know, it just seems colder to me as I get older.
Right.
It feels
No.
colder. It feels colder. I don't know, but it was so nice in Florida last week when we were there. It was 85 degrees.
Rub it in.
Yeah, I know. And I sat on the beach and I read 2 novels and just really enjoyed the time in the sun. I actually got a little sunburn on my face last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's still there. It's just not as direct for us. We just have to hold on for spring to come. Ugh, feels like a long ways away.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
There she is. There she is.
Hello, Debbie. Now she's on.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm
Hi, how are you?
good. I forgot my glasses though.
Oh,
I was just going to say, I didn't recognize you without the glasses on to read.
Yeah, I won't be able to see without them. Let me just go.
Good idea.
yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's
I can,
it's funny if you're not used to wearing glasses other than reading. You know, you don't realize if you have them on or not until you have to read. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I have this thing now, if I have to read and I don't have my glasses, boy, my anxiety just goes to the moon. I just feel like I've gone blind or something. I cannot read a single word on a page without my glasses on. And
Welcome to the club.
yeah, thanks. When did I apply? I didn't think I applied to this club.
Yeah, well, at least on the phone though, sometimes you can make the font larger. That's my
that's
only
right.
saving grace.
Yes, that's right. If you're on the iPad or on the phone, you can make the font larger and no one will know that you're blind. But I say that cautiously.
33,
Yeah,
Debbie, 33 we're at.
yeah, Psalm 33.
Psalm 33,
Yep,
okay.
a hymn to the Creator. All right, so why don't we begin? We may be joined by some others. I know our secondary community from the congregation in Jersey City.
Claremont, yeah.
Yeah, in Jersey City will probably come to join
Huh?
us. Hey,
Someone's here.
look at that.
Someone's coming.
Yep.
Here we go.
What happened?
Hello.
Bernadette.
I don't know what happened. What happened? Okay, there.
There you are.
You're here. What happened is you joined us.
Right.
Hello, everyone. I mean,
Hello.
Florida back. I'm in the middle of cooking, so I'll mute myself and I'm listening.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
That's a perfect way to go along. And then if you hear something that you really feel the need to respond to, you just come back and turn that mic right on, okay? All right. So we're reading Psalm 33. And I don't know, Debbie, are you going to read or Barbara, are you going to read?
Debbie's going to read
Oh, Debbie's
because
gonna read, okay.
she's not joining us tomorrow, so
Okay.
Yeah, not gonna
she
make
has, that's her punishment.
All right.
Uh-oh.
So it's Psalm 33.
Okay. Rejoice in the Lord, O you righteous. Praise befits the upright. Praise the Lord with the lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. For the word of the Lord is upright, and all his work is done in faithfulness. He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the steadfast love of the Lord. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all their hosts by the breath of his mouth. He gathered the waters of the sea as in a bottle, put the deeps in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord, let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm. The Lord brings the counsel of the nations to nothing. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the thoughts of his heart to all generations. Happy is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen as his heritage. The Lord looks down from heaven, sees all humankind from where he sits enthroned. He watches all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all and observes all their deeds. A king is not saved by his great army. A warrior is not delivered by his great strength. The war horse is a vain hope for victory, and by its great might it cannot save. Truly the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope in his steadfast love, to deliver their soul from death and to keep them alive in famine. Our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and shield. Our heart is glad in him because we trust in his holy name. Let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us, even as we hope in you.
Okay. What a beautiful, beautiful song. I mean, it points to above and beyond any circumstance of our individual lives and directs us to a kind of an awareness that things are happening. Things happened, they came to be, they continue to be, somehow in one way or another in the great plan of God. And I use that word carefully because I think it gets abused sometimes in terms of how we talk to each other about what life is. But this is a it's a at one point one of the commentators talks about it as it's not a philosophical theology, it's a very down-to-earth expression of where life comes from, how it goes on from one stage to the next, and all of it is understood as issuing forth from God, just coming from God. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight and to say is that verse 6 says, by the Lord's word the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all of their host. Now what I found interesting is, in the region of the Red Sea and the area around Egypt, there were 3 or 4 religions of antiquity that probably predated the organizing monotheistic religion of the Hebrews. Every one of those religions has a concept of creation. Everything that is has ushered forth from first a thought in the mind of God, and then a word spoken by God. And these religions don't have any root sharing with the Hebrew faith. In other words, it almost seems as if the people independently have carried with them these 3 major religions from the area you can find in their antiquities, this idea that the world and the earth and all the creation began first as an idea in the mind of God. And then a word was spoken. So that, as it says in verse 6, by the Lord's word the heavens were made, and the breath of his mouth all their host. And he, meaning God, gathers together the waters of the sea like a heap. Now they point out that that's a sort of a slant or a reference to how the waters were heaped up when God wasn't creating the world, but when God was creating the nation of Israel in Egypt. And the waters were heaped up. And throughout the Bible, sometimes we miss it because we get so used to it, but throughout the Bible, there is a deep connection between the functions of nature, the waves, the sun, the wind and the rain, and the formations of the earth, the earthquakes, and all of them in all these major religions from the area are understood as moving at God's command. There's no random acts. There's no just fate here. And so that we don't get it wrong, they make it clear, again, back in the ancient time, when they are talking about obeying the word of God, obeying the law of God. Look at verse 5. God is the one loving righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the Lord's loving kindness. And so it's like God didn't just come up with a bunch of rules, but that in the creation itself, in the heart of creation, is this call to loving kindness and mercy and justice from one human being to another. And God is the source of it all. This is God's world. And so if you want to survive, if you want to,
Excuse me.
if you want to survive and you want to do well in this world that was made by a God of justice and loving kindness.
All right. Thank you.
You've got to come around to the fact that is the nature of the world. It's the nature of creation. Now, I don't know how hard that is to believe in the days in which we live, Because sometimes it feels like the nature of creation is hard bent towards brutality and injustice and all kinds of mercilessness. And I don't know what you think about that, but I was inspired. They're singing a hymn that says, the very foundations of the world, the very structure of life is based on justice. And it's based on fairness, and it's based on loving kindness and mercy, and all the things that Jesus dusts off so many years later, and the Prophet Muhammad also pointed to them, and the Jewish faith in Micah constantly stirs those things to the surface and says, stop inventing strange appendages to attach to what walking in faith and obeying God really is. Just pay attention to how the world is made. What do you think of that? Does that sound like a fairy tale? I think Melinda has joined us too. Hi, Melinda.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Are you driving still? Welcome.
I'm not driving. I
You're not-
had to stop at the store to get cold medicine for my husband.
Okay. All right. Listen, I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad I'm here too.
Good, good. So we're reading and talking now about Psalm 33.
Okay, so I'm not too far off. Okay,
No.
wonderful. Thank you.
So what else? What did you hear? What are you thinking about as you've listened to this song that people are singing when they're gathered in their worship space?
Kind of an explanation, like the creation stories that every culture has. This is kind of like that. It's explaining who and why the earth was created and the people in it, and then just saying how wonderful it is to be God's people. Here we are in this creation, and how mighty God is, because, all the things that happen on earth, kings and warriors and all of that, pale, in comparison with God's power and majesty. I think it's a real basic creation kind of a psalm. But the language is beautiful.
It is. I think it's very beautiful. And it, not in a way to intimidate, but there's that section where it talks about that, God sees everything. God sees everything that goes on. And then I love, for whatever it means, you think about, well, what do you need to really make it in life? What do you need to be strong or to be safe? And verse 16, the king is not saved by a great army.
Right.
The warrior is not delivered by great strength. A horse is hopeless for victory, and by its strength it cannot deliver. And of course, the unstated part or the understated part of that is, that other psalm that says, my hope is in the Lord. My hope is in God. And God, who earlier it says, God is the one who, somewhere it talks about frustrates. Verse 10, the Lord frustrates the plan of nations,
Right.
and restrains the schemes of people. I don't know, there's just so much confidence in this song. It's like everything is going to work out. Everything is going to be okay. And everything is going to move ultimately, maybe not in your lifetime or maybe not even in the next lifetime, but ultimately the God who created the world with a word is not going to be frustrated in God's plans for the population that's on the earth.
Okay. All you can think of is now, the now, and what's happening now, and, how long do we have to wait?
How long, God? But the last line, let your steadfast love, O Lord, be upon us,
Yeah.
even as we hope in you.
Yeah.
It's not easy
No.
to say how long, as you said. When? When will this happen? How long do we have to be steadfast?
The Lord's eye is upon those that stand in awe of him. I do not like that they make that the word fear. It's awe. It's the Lord's eye is on those who stand in awe of God. So the creation story is to invite you to step back a little bit from the details of your life. It's like when you walk out on a night like tonight and you can look up and you see that orb, that beautiful glow of the moon. And then you see, for the last couple of nights in the deep of the night, there have been, as they've been calling them, companion stars that are moving with the moon. Just a beautiful, beautiful array that invites you to step back a little bit from the problems and the worries and the fears, and maybe even allow your voice, your mouth to utter, this is God's world. And we stand in awe of that. Because in spite of what may be happening right in front of us, that God is at work. God's eye is upon those who stand in awe of those, upon those that depend upon God's loving kindness, to rescue their soul from death and to keep them alive in famine. We long for the Lord. He is our strength and our shield. And I have no idea. I have no idea what the individual human experiences have been like in the region of Gaza, and I'm not going to comment tonight about the causes or the solutions or anything, but I enter into a wondering of what it is like to live through the experiences where there is no water and there's no food and there's no light in the night. And there are many Muslim Palestinians who are in that experience, but there are also lots of Christians. There's Christians mingled in with that group. Many Palestinians are Christians. There's an archbishop of the Orthodox Church is in this area in Gaza. And so I wonder, are they pulling out these? Are they pulling out this psalm? Are they singing this psalm in their worship gatherings? In the middle of the night or in the heat of the day with no water and no medicine? We long... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would think so, because it's when you are in dire straits and when it is the worst, when you are weak, is when you find strength. It's when you turn to the Lord. Is when you have the Holy Spirit intercede for you.
Yes.
Because God knows where you are.
Right.
And that makes them stronger. And that brings them hope. And that makes them, because of what the psalm says there, that brings them to the Lord. And I'm sure they are.
Yeah. And that's why the commentators, this context is why the commentators say the theology of Israel was not an academic theology. It was lived out in the trenches of life. It was lived out in the experiences day to day, and then the people would come together and they would sing these songs, and they would remind themselves in recitation of what they believe, and that sometimes what they believe is defied by what they have going on right in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has happened through the ages, that we discover what we believe, not in the luxury of our living room where we're, trying to make the theological statements fit together, but we discover what we believe in how we live, especially in times of crisis, of disaster or worry about the future. I see Judy has joined us. Hello, Judy.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Muted.
Yeah, she is. We can't hear you, Judy. You got your sound turned off. There you are.
How's this, Linda?
Welcome. It was on and then it went off again.
Unmute. Wait a second.
Now you're
There you are.
You're
Now
going-
we hear you,
you're going on
but
and
it
off.
says it's muted.
Oh,
Yeah, she
there you are.
muted.
You're on
It
now.
says, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now we
Yeah.
can.
Now we can, yeah.
Oh,
You're
good.
unmuted.
Okay. It says mute. Goody. I'm glad to be here. Yes, very glad.
Glad you're here too. So
I'm late.
we're in the middle of discussing Psalm 33.
Okay.
33, a hymn to the Creator.
Yes. I have it. Thank you.
Yep.
I think that, when you say you prefer the word awe instead of fear of God,
Yeah.
I kind of do myself as well. And I know in Islam, in Arabic, awe translates to tawheed. That's like, understanding the majesty of God and in being in awe of God. And that supersedes most everything else. I mean, when you realize that with just a word, that God created everything, kun fiyakun, be and it will be. It's monumental. I mean, how does that happen? We can't really comprehend it. We try to make scientific explanations for it, but when you really believe it, it supersedes science, and it is awe-inspiring. And even if you're going through an awful time, that's still there, that being in awe of God. And I think that probably helps the people of Gaza be resilient, and it helps both sides, the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Exactly.
If they would, if they could just say, okay, we understand we have the same basic understanding of God. Why are we not getting along?
I know. So this, I don't know. I love what you said. It's not an intellectual assent to science. That is not. It's not in conflict with science. But this word awe, like you said, it is the fundamental frame of mind that endures in the heart of the believer, and creates a power to endure all things. You look at the record throughout the Hebrew Scriptures and throughout the New Testament, that believing in God never ever brought people to a place where they were like powerful. but there is a power for living in the recognition of the awe of God. It's a power that supersedes the experiences, and that's not an excuse for leaving people alone in their suffering. It's not an excuse for saying, well, hungry people, they can just rely on the awe of God and they'll be okay. That's ridiculous. But that's kind of what has happened. We forget this is a very tangible, very real life experience, to come to a place where you can know, not just say, but you can know that this world and all that is in it and everything that is happening in it or not happening in it somehow belongs to God. I like the word belongs. I don't think God controls it. I don't always know why, but it's a place that we come to. So I think this happens when we gather in worship, and you get inspired by a beautiful hymn, with fabulous music, and I mean, it happens to me. I know it happens to others. You know, you come into this experience and all of a sudden this music and this, you might be feeling completely down and angry and whatever, and yet somehow you get, well, there's the word, you get inspired. And in that inspiration, your mind discovers a new way of thinking about your circumstances.
What's the definition of AWB?
You know, I also like these verses that talk about God is watching.
Yes.
He's the watcher who looks down and sees all that's happening. And, you know, we're often reminded to act as if we are standing before God at all times. And this says just that.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that you are seen.
Yeah.
You are loved, you are recognized, and you are seen. And that's also inspiring.
Yes.
It's also, it also makes you curb your enthusiasm a little bit for doing bad stuff. But,
Can be a
you
little,
know, it should anyway, but keeps you on the right path.
can be a little bit like this elf on the shelf, which has been is brought back
Yeah.
again. Oh, I hate that thing. I do not agree with
Better
that.
watch out, you better not shout.
Yeah, I know with that elf. You know, and the thing is, this whole folklore of the elf on the shelf with these kids, you know, parents go to great lengths. You know, the elf moves around in the night. Some of the elves do nasty things in the house while, you know, but they're still watching. They're reporting to Santa Claus, and I think, oh my goodness, it's like legalism gone wild. You know, just controlling the mind of the kids, but
Oh.
I was gonna
So are we trying to make Santa Claus God? Santa Claus is watching.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a theme that recurs a lot in human experience. What I was going to say before is there's several passages in the Psalms, especially, but in other places, some of the litanies in Isaiah and in the prophets. There is this way that humans talk to God, and they say, "God, are you seeing what's happening here?" And in one place in one of the prophets, the prophet says, "God, it's time for you to get awake. You have fallen asleep, and you are not seeing what is happening here. You are not seeing it." And so there's this thing, Walter Brueggemann makes a big deal out of it, that one of the roles that we have, it sounds awfully audacious, but one of the roles that we have in this life is to shake the heavens and make sure the heavens see what's happening, you know, so that our prayers sometimes are, "God, awake, awake and come and intervene in this circumstance." And wow, I get that. Like, I don't want to be responsible for working out a whole theology of that, but I get that. I get that sometimes it's a great comfort to know that God is seeing what's happening in my life. And maybe that doesn't make any difference in terms of what happens or doesn't happen, but it makes a difference in terms of how you go through it. The Lord knows. The Lord knows the experiences of your life. And then, of course, the great promise in all this theology is, and God will deliver you. May not be tomorrow.
Right.
But you cannot, in the hands of the writers of the Psalms and in the hands of the theologians of the Hebrew, you cannot make the world into a random place. It's not random. it functions in its greatest sense. Behind it all, it functions according to God. I don't even want to call it the laws of God unless you're all agreed that we're going to accept the words to translate the laws of God as justice and loving kindness and mercy and grace. That's the claim of the people of faith. And sometimes they're laughed off the world stage because, where is mercy and grace at work in some of these circumstances that we experience?
Is there a little bit of fear also? In awe?
Yeah, if you pushed me, if you pushed
I just
me.
funny, I just thought that too.
Do you remember when the World Council of Churches or the United Nations declared the year of the child? And the painting that they had, or the motto that they had, was a picture of a child in a boat. And I won't quote it exactly correctly, but the saying on the bottom of the poster was, "Lord, the sea is so large, and my boat is so small." Now, whenever I read that, I loved it. I just love that image. I love the poetry of it. I love the power of it. There's awe in that, but there's also a little fear. I mean, picture a little child in a little dinghy out in the middle of the rocking and rolling waves of the ocean, and a prayer, "Lord, these oceans are really big, and my boat is tiny." And so I just think, yes, if you're talking about that kind of fear, yes.
Yeah. Show reverence.
So we then need the courage to overcome that fear and realize that we are instruments of that peace.
Yes, absolutely. Because
That you can't say, God do it, because we need to make sure that we're doing God's work.
yes. Yes, because aligning ourselves with God's work is ultimately aligning ourselves with the very forces that brought the world into existence to begin with. That is the true path. I don't know, what your politics were back in the 1970s, but I watched the funeral for Rosalind Carter today. And if you have a chance to see it, I know it's recorded, but you have the chance to see it, the simplicity and the power of her life interpreted in the world. And the awareness that she had one calling in life. And that calling in life was to live out in the world compassion and mercy and grace. And even when it put her at risk or when it got her involved in conflict, she never wavered. I mean, they told us stories that were amazing about her courage in seeking vaccinations for diseases that many people were turning away from, and she refused to turn away. And she taught not just by what she did, but by what she said. This is life. This is it. There's no other place to find life except in this way of living that seeks love toward your neighbor. And, it's one thing for a preacher to say it. It's another thing for an actor like Rosalind Carter, who lived the life that she lived, to then, her life was the sermon.
Right. I think she and her husband both lived life with a lot of humility. Even though they were in that high position, they didn't ever act like you would assume if you compare them with other world leaders. And, they just didn't.
No.
They had a humility before God. I think they were true believers who felt the awe, the taqwa of God.
Yes.
And lived humbly in their lives before God.
Yes. I think that's true. And, and they talked about how there was no sermon in the funeral. There was none. They only had members of her family who talked, and the underlying thing was the sermon is her life. It is her life. You don't need a sermon on top of it. In fact, the Ralph Warnock said, there's no need for a sermon. Just pay attention to what we tell you about how this woman lived and what she did. It was really inspiring, I just have to say. It was, but I thought about this psalm, and that's the kind of confidence that this psalm generates. Whether it survived after they walked out of the building and left worship or not, I don't know. I don't know. But in the gathering of people, there is a stirring of, I don't even know what to call it. There's a stirring of this way of seeing life. And it's a strength that will get you through difficult times. It's a mission statement that will direct your life when you aren't in difficult times. And it's an unfolding about a reality that not just underlies the created order, but is the created order. And doesn't give greed and hurt and hostility, it doesn't give them a foothold in terms of the structure of the world. They're here, they're real, but when you're enwrapped, when you're embraced in this awe of God, there's a little shiver of fear that moves through your body because you are in the presence of the primordial being. And that can, the word fear can lead to you being afraid. And that, I just don't think that's the response that you get.
There's also a sense of wonder, I think. And
Yes.
wonder and fear. I don't know if you mix it up, how it comes out, I'm not sure. But I think those elements are there, both.
But I think it's fear of, can we do it, rather than fear of God.
Yeah.
That, do we have the courage? Do we have the wherewithal? Can we really make a difference? Not that we're afraid of God, but that we're afraid that we can't do what we would like to do.
Yeah, we're not up to it. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Barbara. I think that more often than not, that's what keeps us from taking on the adventure of living in faith. We can't do it. We just,
Or just, I was going to say, when you say it's the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, because we can know things and we can work through, but in everyday life, it's really the unknown that causes that fear. And when we succeed in these things, that's where the awe comes.
Yeah. Yes.
Also, I think the fear of failure.
Right.
Absolutely.
I was in a workshop yesterday that was follow-up of a program that we had here where I live, and it was talking about how to talk to those who perhaps don't think the way we do. And it was talking about being able to reframe what people are saying without, reacting to, how could you say such a stupid thing or something, but somehow or other to reframe what they are saying and somehow or other reach in and get to know that person and to be able to have a dialogue with those who we don't agree with. And it was a very interesting project, but it's not, but that's my fear all the time. I don't want to say anything because I'm going to get upset, and I don't know, I don't understand that person, but it was a very, it was a step by step as to how to go about speaking to people who you really don't understand where they're coming from, and able to have a dialogue with them.
When I was at Nabisco, there was a formula that we used to use in some of our workshops, and it goes to exactly what you're talking about, that the way that you try to make another person understand, rather than, attacking their belief, is that you begin with, I feel that when you say,
Right.
so that, it gives them, if they're listening, an opportunity to understand your position,
Right.
and then they can explain theirs. But it tamps down, any kind of intensity or, any kind of conflict before the next part of the dialogue takes place. Yeah, absolutely.
So I just make a confession and tell you that I've lost some of those skills for remaining calm and trying to figure out what the person is saying. I mean, we had an experience on this vacation trip we took. We ended up in JetBlue. We ended up one seat behind, a couple in front of us, and they didn't know each other, and they decided to inform each other entirely of all the things that they really believe about what's going on in the world and what's wrong with the world. And I feel very safe to tell you that as I sat there in the seat behind them, I heard them espouse everything that I disagree with. Everything. I mean, it was like, I didn't even know what to do. I was like trying to find earplugs to put in my ears because I had no interest in understanding why they were saying what they were saying. I just wanted them to get out of my earshot. It's just, I don't know. I think I've gone back, I was a philosophy major in college. And of course, in the Socratic method, in dialogue and debate, you don't have the right to disagree with someone until you can argue their position. You have to listen to their position and know it well enough that in a debate, you could argue their position and win. Then you have the right to disagree with them. But I'm going to tell you, I've lost all that. I've become a very primitive man. I'm caught up in this polarization. I am wrapped up in it, and I'm not happy about it. But I feel like I've lost. I can get into interfaith and interreligious dialogue, and I could do that with, my sisters and brothers in a variety of religions and all. I don't have any trouble with that at all. But in this realm of, I don't know what to call it, but in this realm of, I guess just the political debate, I have no common ground, none. And I cannot understand the other person. I just can't. And I say that as a confession, not as a determination. God will give me strength and help me. I know God will. But it was a 6-hour flight.
Oh, that's painful.
And they were loud. In fact, when the attendant came down the aisle with snacks, I was praying that she or he would take the snacks so they could shut up. And when you know it, both of them turned the snacks and the drinks down so they could keep talking.
Gee.
Sorry.
Makes you want to jump right out of the plane, doesn't it?
Oh, my goodness. So
I had lunch today with the ladies at the masjid, at the mosque, and almost all of them are Palestinian Americans. And every time I go, I'm thinking, what's the conversation going to be like today? Is it going to be really upsetting? And It never is. It's always something that opens my eyes to new things. Today we sat, and when the topic did come up, as it inevitably does, they were saying, they let some of the hostages go, and then they were saying, well, and look, isn't it great that, the Israelis are letting a lot of hostages, they called them hostages, not prisoners.
Right.
And they noted, which I know is true, that the great majority of the people that the Israelis are letting go have not been charged with anything.
Right. They've not
They're
been
just
convicted.
held for months and a year at a time with no charges against them and no indictments and no convictions. Most of the people they're letting go, and they said they are hostages as well. And I had to look at it that way with different eyes. They're all hostages to one another in that area of the world, and it's a shame. It's a real shame that these things happen, but sometimes what the ladies say really kind of make an impact on me. Like, I didn't look at it that way because I'm looking at American TV, so we need to, I don't know, political talk though. I get you, I know. Usually it is enough to make you crazy, but some of these ladies, they're just, the big topic of discussion today, believe it or not, was kids.
Yeah.
Our children and grandchildren, they have no manners. What happened to us that we let our children grow up without manners? That was the big complaint today.
It sounds like that's been going on for hundreds of years, isn't it?
Right. And I thought, well, that I can relate to. We all talk about that. Everybody has this problem. We always think our generation is the best, and all the ones that come after us, they've lost their way. So it was a nice lunch, but sometimes when you hear from people who might have a little different outlook on things, you learn a lot. So
You do, and that's and there's no question about that. Like it's part of what I love, even with interfaith dialogue and even interregional dialogue. Talking to people who come from a different area. I've always loved and looked forward to the insights that were there, with prejudices that I could identify and go, wow, I've really carried around the wrong idea about that group of people or whatever. I love that. I love that experience in life, but I just feel like all that has died. That there is a wall now. There is a wall, and that I can't climb over it, and they can't climb over it, and it's thick and it divides. And so I don't underestimate the power of God. And I see it. I was full of lots of despair about the condition of Gaza and Israel, the positions that they had taken up. And I have to say, I've been saying a prayer of thanks to God every morning for the softening of hearts, for the willingness on both sides to come together for the sake of these people caught in the middle. And I only pray for it to be multiplied. Can it really just be multiplied? And can we come to solutions? Rather than further, declarations of death to the other side. In that we'll all die. We'll all die. If people persist in those declarations of death and destruction to each side, the whole world is too small for that nowadays. It's just too small. And so I'm happy to say that I literally am thanking God. As I was riding on my way from where I was to get here tonight, I wasn't at home, and I was listening while they were talking about how both sides now, tomorrow is the last day of the truce, but both sides are hoping that it can be extended so that more people can receive the aid and the supplies that they need, and more hostages on both sides can be released. And I say, go, God, go. just do that work.
But I think also, we still look to the leaders to make it all happen, and that we have to take responsibility ourselves for everything that we do, that we are open to kindness and acceptance of others. And, it's so much easier to say, why don't they fix it all?
Yeah.
And we've got to fix it ourselves.
But the challenge is, how do you get the leaders to refrain from some of this vitriolic language and thinking, because that's where it comes from.
Do they think that that's because the people that they want to vote for them feel that way, so that if we don't speak up, that's not what we want?
Yeah, so at the same time that, I'm reading, and it's wonderful that the hostages are being released, then the next line is, and Netanyahu was saying that he still wants, when this is all over, he still wants Hamas, out, and they want, the Israelis, the river to the sea. So it's just like it's just taking in a deep breath, while this is happening. But as soon as it's exhaled, it's the same kind of verbiage and the same kind of, of intensity. And how do you get inside the minds of those leaders? Because they're the ones who are, going to make the difference or the sameness.
Well, I thought. Go ahead.
Well, a lot of individuals too get caught up in this. And I was watching the news the other night. The 3 Palestinian American or Palestinian, I don't think they have dual citizenship, I'm not sure. The boys that were shot, the college students that were shot in Vermont.
Yeah.
And the one uncle said, we worried about my nephew being in the occupied West Bank all these years, and the 2 friends that he grew up with, and we felt it was a good thing that he came to the United States to go to school. And who knew that in Vermont, of all places, going to a prestigious school, that he would be shot with his 2 friends.
Yeah.
But he said, and hate has no country. Hate is all over the world, unfortunately.
That's right, and that is true. And it's hate. I don't know. It's the failure of the human heart. It's the opposite of what this psalm is saying. Is that our strength is in this awe and awareness of God. It is. That's where our life is. That's where our hope is. It's a reminder that no matter what the circumstances of our life are, this is our hope, our strength, our joy. It says in the beginning, sing to God a new song. And one of the commentators said, it isn't even really clear what they meant. Like, what is the new song? What is the old song? Because there's songs that we sing that don't work. They don't fit in life. And so singing the new song is being open then to the effect that this sense of awe, this sense of awareness of God can have on us. But, the opposite is rage. It's rage. And I don't think any of you would know who they are. I just will tell you, the rage reaches right down into the nitty-gritty of our lives. We had, while I was away on vacation, I got a call from the director of the preschool that 2 moms, having had terrible days and very difficult times, arrived to pick their children up. It gets dark now at 4:30, and they arrived, and the parking lot was crowded, and the one mother left the door of her car open while she was trying to get the car seat in, and the other mother, impatient to get into the parking place, blew her horn at this woman. And they both went crazy. They went berserk and embarrassed themselves in their release of their anger toward each other. And fortunately, we have this one young, very strong worker in the school who came out and stood between them. And somebody else was videotaping it. And this young, I mean, she's 19 years old. And she's standing between them, and she is saying to them, do not behave like this. Do not behave like this. And she said, there are children here. There are children who are going to be influenced by what you're doing. But she could not make a headway with them. They finally managed to get their kids and be gone. But then, of course, when they got home, they started to realize with great embarrassment what had happened. And then they began to make the calls to apologize and to try to make amends for, what the pressures and stress of their life had done to them. It's, I just think so much of what I hear is like a rage. It's a rage. It's an unhappiness with something that is happening, or it's no longer just an opinion or a debate or a position that someone is in. It's a rage. And, we're very capable of it. I'm capable of it. And I have to remember that, that. And so then that's why I say this is why you've got to go to church. You've got to go to worship. You've got to go to the mosque. You've got to go and you've got to be nurtured and coddled in this bigger, deeper vision of God and of the world and of purpose and all the rest of it, so that we can maintain our way of life on this planet.
I'm as I'm listening, just last week, I was reading something where there was a distinction made between two words, react and respond. And I thought, I have to remember that because, in listening to this other point of view that could be so bizarre and almost Byzantine, if when you're listening and there's a part of you that really wants to jump out and react, but if you give it a couple of minutes and you respond, even the sound of the two words, one sounds like an attack, react, and the other is much more gentle, is to respond. So even it affects the language that we use so much. And just what you were talking about, Pastor Lou, hate, where does it come from? It comes from words, aside from deeds, but it has to start with a word, yeah? And to explain the deed, you do you hate, and I don't know, I'm just thinking a lot about that just an ordinary, dialogue with your husband or with, a close friend, or, that it's not a good thing to react, but to respond is different. And it comes out differently, the tone, the rhythm, your voice, the words you choose. If there could be more of that, and where, if we elevate it to Hamas and Israel and, there's a lot of reaction,
Yes.
There's very little response. Yeah.
I think that for me, just as a personal knowledge, like a surprise myself was, I don't even know when it came about, but when it became popular to post political ideas on the internet, on Facebook or someplace like that, when I first started to engage, man, I was not responding, I was reacting. I would read something that I really disagreed with, and then I tried to say the thing that would make that person look really wrong, and then also convince them that I was right. And wow, I just can't believe I got really into it. And then I had to take a step back. There was a lot of good moderating advice that said, look, no one has ever convinced anyone to change their mind through an online conversation. It just doesn't happen. All that happens is entrenchment and going further and further and further into your own opinion. So now I don't even debate. I don't even comment. I don't even hear or see other people's ideas in that format. It's not a good place to have conversation. But person to person is really good. you know? If
Unless you're sitting behind them on the plane.
yes. Yes.
That took the place of your Thanksgiving dinner with the uncle that watches Fox News, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And so I had to figure out how to, keep from choking them from behind, And kept thinking about, how's this going to be in the paper, Presbyterian pastor attacks a person in the seat in front of them. And the air marshal has to pry him off of the person. Like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. God, save us. Save me. I want to be that person of gentleness and compassion,
Right.
and say with all earnestness to a person like that, I can see why you feel the way you do. I can see why you feel the way you do, and I wish you didn't feel the way you do. I know that. I know how to do that, but whew, gone.
That's interesting. We all know how to do that, but do we do it?
No.
Right.
I do find that, because I get stressed out so much on issues on the phone, where I, really get annoyed at whoever I'm talking to, who I know has nothing to do with why I have this problem. But I have at least gotten to the point where I'll apologize to that person and say, I'm really sorry that I'm taking this out on you, because I know it's not your fault that this whole thing has gotten into this craziness. But, I hope that because I can't imagine having those kinds of jobs where you have to listen to people all day long who have all these problems that never seem to get solved. And, and they have to listen to it and try to be calm, cool, and collected while I'm going crazy because this has happened to me or that has happened to me. And, but I guess I still haven't gotten to the point where I can calmly say, what happened to my insurance, or where's my money, or whatever the issue is that has happened to me that, is the end of the world for me at that moment. But
My sister would have lots of stories to tell because she
does?
comes in. Yes, and the stories that she comes up with, oh my goodness, I don't know how she handles it, but sometimes she'll call up during lunch and vent. She said, I just have to let it know. I had this woman had me on here for 2 hours or an hour, just trying to help her work it through. And my husband used to say, I held all that energy in until I got home and then unleashed it on him because I was working with special needs children. And towards the end of my career, I was in self-contained classroom. So I had to really restrain. I had to really refrain for getting upset. And I managed to get through the day, but I tell you, once I got into that door of the house, he said everything that I held in all day came out.
Wow.
So I do understand.
So good for you.
But Barbara, I feel as I'm listening to you, I remember just yesterday talking to somebody, happened to be about insurance too. And at a certain point, I found myself, fortunately, saying, I know this is just a job for you and it's not fault. This is happening, to take the person out of the situation. But it didn't happen right away, way down the way.
right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so that customer service representative held their tongue and then went home and took it out on their family.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. She,
I didn't think about
my
that.
sister said,
Yeah. What goes
I
around.
always
sister
think
said,
they
well-
must think it's just another crazy old lady. Invented.
Oh, my goodness.
that my sister, she has that problem. She said when, especially because she's dealing with licenses, and these are these people jobs, and they're very eager to get these things taken care of.
Right.
And they get frustrated because they can't get through whatever it is that they need to do
Right.
on the computer. And so sometimes they'll come and their anger will come out on them. And sometimes they say, oh, you're a blessing. God sent you to me because, so she gets it at both ends.
Well, the blessing is the good.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
hopefully she gets more of those. But it is. It's so stressful because it is an issue where I've had issues where they drop my health insurance, or they tell me I owe money to taxes or whatever, and it turns out that the company is at fault, but it's not the person you're talking to. So.
Yeah. Good luck getting to the person. All right, well, my friends, I think we have heard the encouragement of God in terms of leaning on God and finding strength, and then maybe out of that might flow some of God's loving kindness and kindness towards the people in this life, and let's hope for that. Let's pray that we become vessels of that, because that's how we were made. That's what the Word created in us. And so I pray God's blessing on all of you, and thank you for coming and engaging in this conversation tonight and this psalm. And if we were all in the sanctuary together and we had a musician to do it, we'd put these words to music and we would just sing our way out of here. Right?
Right.
All right. Good night, my friends.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Thank you all. Have a great
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Good night.